Tonight on Reporting Scotland. First the freeze, now the thaw. Most of the country starts to get moving again after last week's extreme weather. The government criticises employers who are withholding pay from those who couldn't make it into work. And local businesses count the cost of the shutdown.
Over the week, we probably lost half our business. If it had carried on for like a few weeks, it would have been disastrous, probably.
Also on the programme, a report says salmon farming could damage the marine ecosystem unless action is taken immediately. And a surprise family welcome home as medal-winning track star Laura Muir returns from the World Indoor Athletics. Good evening. The country is returning to normal after days of severe winter weather. Rail services are running, major roads are clear, and the majority of schools are open. But in some parts of Scotland, children won't return to classes until tomorrow. The Met Office is still warning people to expect challenging conditions, with a yellow warning in place for most areas until tomorrow. Stephen Godden reports from Fife.
A breakthrough at last. One of the areas worst affected by the weather. Rural roads in this corner of Fife were blocked for days by thick snow. Their re-emergence today thanks to thawing conditions and continuing effort.
A lot of the roads have got single tracks dug in them with diggers, so we're just trying to clear them wider with snowplows now to free up the traffic.
Things seem to be improving a bit though. I mean, there's a lot of melt there.
The rain's helping now, it's starting to melt. As soon as we snowplow it now, the rain's melting, it's snow now.
As routes opened up, the telltale signs of a difficult few days were obvious.
Standing here, you can smell one of the problems being caused by the weather as much as you can see it. The engineers behind me are working to repair a gas leak, work that needs to be done before this road can reopen.
Across Fife, schools were closed to pupils for a fourth day.
I was quite glad, but I was also, I did want to go back by now.
So what about tomorrow? Are you looking forward to going back?
Sort of, because I want to see my friends again.
I find it fun because I don't really like going to school. I want to go back tomorrow because I want to see my friends and do a lot of work because I want to go back to school.
It was concerns about safety, whether in the playground or travelling to and from school, that led to a blanket closure. Fife, the only council in Scotland to take that decision.
A huge number of staff are working flat out to try and get us to a point where we may have been able to open the schools, but ultimately we didn't have the confidence on safety, and we also had a desire to provide a clear message as early as we could that would help parents plan for Monday. We're obviously pleased that we're able to confirm that we can open all schools tomorrow.
The impact of the heavy snow is revealed by the continuing thaw. It's dramatic in places, but life here is edging back towards normality.
Well, Stephen is at North Queensferry for us tonight, and the improvement in conditions there continues, Stephen?
Yeah, that's right, Sally. Things are returning to normal, and a big leap in that direction will come tomorrow when pupils return to schools here in Fife, although the council are still saying that there may be some problems with school buses. But the thoughts of everyone here and in other parts of the country now turn to what might come next. You see behind me the Forth Bridge. It is, of course, a hugely important part of the East Coast Railway line. Now, further north on that line, already this afternoon we've had problems with flooding between Aberdeen and Dundee. Trains have been facing speed restrictions because of a problem around Montrose, and up and down the East Coast flood alerts are in place. Those are the lowest level of warning, but still something that people are being asked to be mindful of. Borders Council, for example, they say they're making preparations, checking that they have enough sandbags. So while down here by the water in Fife the snow is gone, the change in conditions may well present some new challenges.
Stephen, thanks very much for that. The Scottish Government says it may take action against employers who refuse to let staff stay off work in last week's bad weather. Meanwhile, a union which represents fast food workers has claimed some staff were put at risk after they were told to work on after the red warning was issued. Our business correspondent David Henderson reports.
Heading for home amid the snow and ice. This, the scene last Wednesday as the beast from the east hit Scotland. But even after the red weather warning, some employers chose not to close. This young man's employed by a fast food firm on less than the living wage. we're protecting his identity.
The place was absolutely freezing. There's no reason why people should be uncomfortable when you work, just to make someone some money. There's no excuse for that. We walked home. Snow was up to our legs. The bus had been stopped by that time. It was about 4 o'clock when we got home, and even at that time, there was still folk in and around the building, wondering how to get home pretty much. They lived in towns which were too far away to walk.
By late afternoon on Wednesday, weather across much of Scotland was atrocious. The union, which represents fast food workers, says some staff were put at risk.
I think we need to put something in place where they're held responsible and accountable, and that they're forced to close the store if there's a red weather warning. I think that's really, really important for the future, because if this happens again, I think we won't be so lucky and it could actually end up with someone being seriously injured.
This bout of extreme weather brought much of Scotland's road and rail network to a near standstill. Despite that, we've learnt of many people, even those reliant on public transport, being told that they had to come to work, or they would face having to take a day's leave for their absence, or face getting their wages docked.
Many employers were forced to shut up shop entirely as public transport ground to a halt and police advice was not to travel. But some, who remained open, expected staff to come to work and pay the price if they didn't.
I would want to send a message that these have been unprecedented circumstances that are not within the control of any member of staff, so it's important that people are treated fairly and don't end up being penalised because of circumstances out with their control.
A great many larger, medium and larger sized businesses were able to have people working remotely, implement well-planned contingency plans for this sort of event, if not always actually weather related. For smaller businesses it's a tougher decision and a more difficult decision. I think we'd encourage business to be as magnanimous as you can towards your staff and be as flexible as you can. And actually it's a great opportunity to show what a great employer you are and to build staff morale and loyalty.
This icy blast caused huge disruption to Scotland's economy and has cost business millions of pounds. But the question now, who takes the hit? Employers or their members of staff? David Henderson, reporting Scotland.
And what's been the cost of the severe weather to the economy, and in particular to small businesses? Rebecca Curran has been finding out what impact it's had on independent retailers.
Eden Flowers, Fiona speaking, can I help?
Back to business as usual at this florist in Aberdeen, but last week it was a different story. These flowers come from Holland, and the delivery van couldn't make it past Glasgow. As the snow continued to fall, so did the number of customers.
We struggled. Our trade, I would say, it was quite bad. It was, I think maybe we had a third of the people coming through the door. There was nobody here, but you just have to get on with your job, don't you? And, you know, pay the bills. I think a lot of people just didn't go to work. They were told not to take that journey, weren't they? So for us being here, but we have to be here.
It was a similar story at this hairdresser on the outskirts of the city. The severe weather led to a huge drop in takings.
Over the week, we probably lost half our business.
What kind of immediate impact does something like that have on a small business like this?
We are down in our takings, but like I say, it'll pull itself back because everybody will be coming next week or this week. So it doesn't really... A few days is fine, but if it had carried on for like a few weeks, it would have been disastrous probably.
But the big freeze benefited some independent retailers. As shoppers reported empty shelves in some supermarkets, people turned to local business.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday we did have increased business, due to the weather and the fact that obviously some of the larger chains were running out of supplies and stock, and as I say, we were fully stocked and we had no issues at all.
It's a complicated picture. Some retailers will cope better than others in severe weather, but the Federation of Small Businesses is now calling on banks to be flexible for those experiencing short-term cash flow issues. Rebecca Curran, reporting Scotland, Aberdeen.
And we'll be returning to the weather later in the programme. The Economy Secretary Keith Brown has joined the contest to become the SNP's new deputy leader. Mr Brown is the third candidate and the most senior to come forward. Glasgow MSP James Dornan and Julie Hepburn have already declared. The position became available when Angus Robertson stepped down last month. 8 men have gone on trial charged with murdering a man in Fraserburgh. Gary Clampett, who was 39, died after an incident in June last year. All 8 deny the charge. They're accused of using knives, a machete, sword, chain, hammer, a crowbar, wrench and stick, bats, golf clubs, poles and a metal bat. The trial's being heard at the High Court in Glasgow. A 35-year-old man has been arrested and charged in connection with the death of a man in the town in Perthshire. Police discovered the body of John Donaghy in a house in Alyth late on Saturday night. They say their inquiries into the 26-year-old's death are continuing.
Somebody in the car.
The Prime Minister and the leader of the SNP at Westminster have clashed over the economic consequences of Brexit for Scotland. Theresa May has been briefing MPs after her keynote speech on Brexit last week. Our political correspondent David Porter is outside the House of Commons for us this evening. David, little chance of... There you are. David, little chance of a meeting of minds on this one.
No meeting of minds at all, I'm afraid, Sally. It is no secret that the SNP, whether it be here at Westminster or indeed the Scottish Government at Holyrood, have very different ideas about Brexit from the UK Government, the opportunities and the challenges that it brings. This was the first opportunity for the Prime Minister to brief MPs after her keynote address on Friday. She repeated that people are not going to get all that they want and there will be compromises, but she said that she believed that actually they could secure a good deal. She also said as well that it was one of her top priorities to ensure, in her words, that the precious union of the United Kingdom remain together. Ian Blackford, the SNP's Westminster leader, accused Theresa May of having the wrong priorities in some quite heated exchanges. They clashed on the economic consequences of Brexit and what lies ahead.
Scotland voted to stay in the EU. We will not be ripped out of the single market and customs union against our will. We will defend the jobs that the Prime Minister is prepared to trade away.
The Right Honourable Gentleman talks about Scotland as an independent nation taking decisions. Can I yet again remind him that from Scotland's economy's point of view, the most important thing is to be part of the United Kingdom. And it's the United Kingdom that will do it.
Now, of course, the negotiations between the UK Government and the EU are not the only talks that are going on. The Scottish Government and the UK Government are embroiled in very lengthy and convoluted talks about what happens to the powers that come back from Brussels, whether they go to Westminster or whether they go to Holyrood. There's another tranche of talks planned for later this week. No one is holding their breath. There won't, I don't think, be any white smoke from those talks. But next week, Theresa May and Nicola Sturgeon are due to hold talks in Downing Street. If a deal is to be done, then it is likely that it will become far clearer by the time the two leaders meet.
David Porter at Westminster, thank you very much. You're watching BBC Reporting Scotland. It's 18 minutes to 7. A reminder of tonight's top story. The clear-up has started. Scotland gets back to normal after the beast from the east. And still to come, John Hardy has been recalled to the Scotland squad after his ban for alleged cocaine use. Scotland's marine ecosystem faces being hugely damaged by salmon farming in the future unless environmental concerns are addressed as a matter of urgency. That's one of the conclusions of a damning report by Holyrood's Environment Committee, which insists improvements have to be made. Our environment correspondent Kevin Keane reports.
It's our economic success story. Not just Scotland's, but the UK's biggest food export worth £600 million. With huge plans for expansion, Holyrood's Environment Committee says there will be harm if practices don't change.
I don't think it's apocalyptic. I think we've made clear we're supportive of the sector. It's an important industry for Scotland, but the point we're making is that the status quo is not an option in terms of its environmental performance.
Environmental groups have long raised concerns about the impact of fish farming, but there's been little independent research in Scotland. The committee heard evidence from both sides of the debate. Its report is highly critical. It says there's been little progress in tackling environmental concerns since 2002, even though the sector has expanded significantly. Further growth without addressing these issues may cause irrecoverable damage to the environment. And it says the sector is not being regulated sufficiently or effectively, with calls for practices to change. The industry insists it's not been sitting on its hands.
There has been a lot of change in the environment since 2002. Things are not quite as they seem. Marine water temperatures have risen by 15% some years, and so that's presented new challenges to us. So it may look on the surface that things haven't changed. Things have been changing enormously.
The industry has found some solutions, like adding cleaner fish to cages such as these wrasse, which eat the sea lice. But even that prompted fresh concerns about the impact of removing large numbers of fish from the sea. And the problem from the sea lice has not gone away.
All of our wild salmon and sea trout that live on the rivers on the west coast of Scotland are exposed to these extremely infectious sea lice larvae, which are coming out of salmon farms in huge numbers, and that's causing very large problems for the wild salmon populations and sea trout populations in the west coast.
Along with processing, this is a hugely important sector which supports thousands of jobs in rural and coastal communities. This report will feed into a wider inquiry from Holyrood's Rural Economy Committee into the impact of salmon farming and its future. Kevin Keane reporting, Scotland.
Now sport and to rugby, and John Hardy has been recalled to the Scotland squad ahead of this weekend's Six Nations clash with Ireland. Hardy was banned for 3 months earlier this season for gross misconduct following allegations of cocaine use. More from our rugby reporter, Andy Burke.
Not so long ago, John Hardy was one of Scotland's standout players. Injuries and disciplinary issues have forced him to the margins of the national team. Now, with previous misdemeanours seemingly forgiven, he's ready to play his part in the Six Nations.
He's a fantastic player. He's got a good pedigree. He's got a good history playing with Scotland. And when you've got a player like that available, then it would be silly not to have him involved some way.
He's played a few games. He's a form player, and it seems as far as Scotland are concerned, he's done his time and they've welcomed him back. What is in doubt now is whether he can force his way past Hamish Watson into the starting lineup, because Hamish Watson has come on leaps and bounds just in the last couple of years.
This win over England last time out means the Scots look ahead to Ireland with confidence and a host of new options. Well, John Hardy is one of 10 players called into the Scotland squad ahead of the trip to Dublin, with players of real quality and experience coming back into the fold. The likes of Alex Dunbar, Fraser Brown and Richie Gray returned to supplement a group flying high after that Calcutta Cup win. They haven't beaten Ireland in Dublin since 2010 though, when the current assistant coach played his part.
It was a great experience. The team really pulled together. Dan Parks had a few drinks after that game and was kind of commentating back in the game at 2 o'clock in the morning in the team room. Talking himself up a lot, but he had a fantastic game, and he had incredible nerves to kick the kick that he had. But it was a great occasion.
After ending a decade-long wait for a win over England, the Scots now aim to smash another unwanted record in Dublin. Andy Burke reporting, Scotland, Edinburgh.
Andy Murray is no longer Britain's #1 tennis player. His place at the top has been taken by the Englishman Kyle Edmund. Murray hasn't played a fully competitive match since Wimbledon last summer. After trying to overcome a chronic hip problem, he's now recovering from surgery and could return to the match court in May. His world ranking has fallen to 29, 5 behind Edmund. Scottish track star Laura Muir says winning her first global athletics medals has given her the confidence to push for further success at world and Olympic level. She took silver and bronze at the World Indoor Athletics Championships in Birmingham at the weekend, but hours later has already switched her focus back to her studies and her final vet exams. Kerry Nedsand's report contains some flash photography.
Back from Birmingham, a surprise at the airport for Laura Muir. Tears at the airport as proud parents welcome their girl home. They're well used to her bringing back medals, but these are the first she's claimed on a global stage.
Yeah, I didn't expect them here at all, so yeah, it was quite a shock seeing them and a bit emotional. I've been thereabouts for so long, and I think it was, been a long time coming to sort of getting a medal on the world stage, but I think now, everything's been put together, I'm physically and mentally sort of in the position to medal at these championships now, and thanks, home crowd, and I love indoors as well. I train indoors a lot of the time, so indoors suits me really well, and I was just really prepared to go out there, and I knew my time was now, and I wanted to get that medal.
After bronze in the 3,000 metres, things got even better in the 1,500.
Laura Muir wins a second medal. It's a silver for Great Britain. Superb run from Laura Muir.
She was only beaten by the Ethiopian multiple world record holder Genzebi Dibaba, leaving much to look forward to in the coming years.
She seems to have really matured over the years. You listen to her interviews, sounds much more assured of herself, much more confident. That ultimately translates into success on the track. So I think this as a global medal is a fantastic start for her to, what could be an amazing future. I mean, we saw last year outdoors that she's right there. So I think this is a great start for her.
We've not reached the limit yet. I mean, we're talking a number of those athletes down there are the best of all time, not the best of the current generation, the best that have almost ever lived. And she's already right at the very top of them. So she's only 24. So yeah, I've got more scope to keep improving, and hopefully over the next few years we will, ready for Tokyo 2020.
Her coach is already targeting the next Olympic Games. But Laura Muir's focus has already switched back to her studies. Her final VET exams are in May, making her achievements on the track all the more impressive. Her chances of future podium places have never looked so good. Kerry Nidsan, reporting Scotland.
What a woman. Well, let's return to the subject of the weather now. Christopher's here. Is the thaw set to continue?
It is for some, Sally. Thank you very much indeed. Hello there, good evening to you. Yes, thaw setting in for many of us, but for others, the snow is still falling and will continue to do so. For the week ahead, low pressure is in charge, so that means fairly cloudy, outbreaks of rain, some snow at times, quite breezy too around parts of the north of the mainland and the Northern Isles. But overnight tonight and tomorrow, we still have a Met Office yellow be aware warning in force for the risk of further snow, some ice and some heavy rain as well, leading to difficult conditions on the roads and also aiding that thaw with spray and poor visibility. So overnight tonight, rain and snow moving its way northwards. Now the snow is going to be on the hills and high ground. In the towns and cities it will be rain and a pretty soggy start to the day tomorrow. Given that easterly wind, it's going to feel quite miserable through the central belts. And through the course of the day, the rain and snow will edge its way northwards. So if you're travelling on higher parts of roads like the A9, expect a significant spell of snow, 10 centimetres or more on the highest parts. You'll notice across central and southern Scotland, though, through the afternoon, drying up but staying rather cloudy. There'll be a few brighter glimpses here and there, but they'll be fleeting. Temperatures by mid-afternoon, 4 or 5 Celsius in the west, further east, perhaps just 3 degrees, and quite a cold feel with those leaden skies. Still some outbreaks of rain around the east Nuke of Fife in towards parts of Angus and Aberdeenshire, certainly on the coast. Inland, snow and significant amount through the Cairngorms. Up towards Inverness in the far north, some rain, some snow over the hills and high ground. Now, the rest of the afternoon into the evening and overnight, that system continues to work its way north and northwestwards. And again, a spell of snow in towards parts of the Highlands and indeed the Northern Isles. Looking ahead towards Wednesday, low pressure still with us, you can see there. And this little occluded front, just meaning some cold air coming around the top of it. That's going to give a spell of wintry weather for the Northern Isles and the far northwest. Elsewhere on Wednesday, though, reasonably dry, once again fairly cloudy, and once again feeling quite cold. That's the forecast. Now.
Christopher, thank you very much indeed. Well, now back to the effect of the weather. Despite some improvement, smaller communities remain cut off by snow. Well, one of them is the Carron Valley area near Stirling. Our reporter Andrew Black is there for us tonight and has just sent us this report.
Well, conditions in most of Scotland may be returning to normal today, but there are still some areas which are suffering some pretty horrific conditions, like here in Carron Bridge in Stirlingshire. Now, as you can see, the snow is still piled up high. A lot of the roads are still impassable, and you might be able to see that a freezing fog has descended on the area, and it's made conditions pretty cold and pretty bad for all the people living around here. In fact, things have been so bad that some residents in this area have been trapped in their home for the last few days, and today the local rescue team, the Trossachs Search and Rescue Team, have been trying to get across these snowy roads and snow-covered area to try and deliver much needed supplies to the people who live here.
Andrew Black in the Trossachs. Well, now a reminder of tonight's main news. Britain's most decorated Olympian, Sir Bradley Wiggins, has told the BBC that he did not cheat and that his life has been made a living hell after he was accused of using medical treatments to enhance his performance. And the clear up has started. Life gets back to normal as the snow, which caused severe disruption last week, starts to melt. That's all from us for now. I'll have the headlines for you at 8 and the late bulletin just after the 10 o'clock news. For now, have a very good evening.